Let us turn our thoughts today to Martin Luther King and recognize that there are ties between us, all men and women living on the earth, ties of hope and love, of sister and brotherhood. And we are bound together in our desire to see the world become a place in which our children can grow free and strong. We are bound together by the task that stands before us and the road that lies ahead. We are bound, we are bound.
There's a feeling like the clenching of a fist. There's a hunger in the center of the chest. There's a passage through the darkness and the mist. And though the body sleeps, the heart will never rest.
Shed a little light, oh Lord.
Shed a little light, oh Lord, oh yeah.
So we can see.
So we can see, yeah.
Just a little light, oh Lord.
Just a little light, oh Lord.
Wanna stand it on up.
Standing on up, yeah.
Standing on up.
Standing on up. Can we walk it on?
Wanna walk it on down.
Shed a little
Shed a little light, oh Lord. Can't get no light from a dollar bill.
Can't get no light from no dollar bill.
Don't give me no light from a TV screen.
Oh, no, no, no.
When I open my eyes, I wanna drink my fill from the well on the hill.
And I know you know what I mean. 'Cause you
Shed a little light, oh Lord.
shed a little light, oh Lord.
So we can see.
Oh yeah.
Just a little light, oh Lord.
Just a little light, oh Lord. Can we stand it
Wanna
on
stand it on up.
Yeah.
Stand it on up.
Oh
Oh Lord.
Oh Lord, walk it on
Wanna walk it on down. Shed a little light, oh Lord. There is a feeling like the clenching of a fist.
There is a hunger in the center of the chest. Oh no.
There is a passage through the darkness and the mist.
Oh no. And though the body sleeps, the heart will never rest. Let us turn our thoughts today to Martin Luther King
And recognize that there are ties between us, all men and women living on the earth, ties of hope and love, of sister and brotherhood.
Good evening and welcome, and thank you for joining us tonight for the 80th, it's remarkable, 80th annual meeting of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Cincinnati. My name is Walter Spiegel, and I am the current president of JCRC. As you just saw, this past year has seen unprecedented attacks on communities of faith here in this country and indeed across the world. Shootings at synagogues in the United States, in Pittsburgh and Poway, church burnings in Louisiana, bombings during Easter services on Sri Lanka, and mass shootings at mosques in New Zealand. I'm proud to say that here in Cincinnati, we refuse to let violence divide us and drive us out of our houses of worship. Instead, we came together across communities to stand in solidarity with each other in our most vulnerable moments. We developed stronger relationships, forged in our collective response to these acts of hatred and violence. We learn by necessity to be better allies and neighbors to one another across differences to fight against hatred and bigotry. Tonight, that learning continues as Alana Newhouse, editor and founder of Tablet Magazine, leads us in a conversation about anti-Semitism, the oldest hatred in a new world, and what's at stake for all of us. I'd like to begin the evening by recognizing a few honored guests who are here with us tonight. Ohio Senator Cecil Thomas, Ohio Representative Catherine Ingren, and representatives from the offices of Cincinnati City Council member Greg Landsman, County Commissioner Todd Porchune, Congressman Brad Wenstrup, Congressman Steve Shabbat, Senator Sherrod Brown, and Senator Rob Portman. Thank you for joining us. I want to thank all of our congregational and community rabbis who are joining us tonight, as well as clergy partners from other faith-based communities across Cincinnati. Thank you to our Federation partners, including our truly remarkable marketing and development teams for their support. Thank you, of course, to our JCRC staff for everything you do all year round. And thank you to Dick Weiland for his long-standing commitment to JCRC's mission of building a more just society for all people in Cincinnati. Before we go any further, I'd like to welcome Rabbi Margaret Meyer, JCRC board member, who will deliver the invocation.
Thank you, Walter. As we gather this evening, as Walter has said, we find ourselves at a difficult moment in our history. At a time when we should be comfortable in our American Jewish community, we find prejudice, anti-Semitism, hatred, and violence all around us, seemingly growing ever stronger in everyday American life. We are not alone in our newfound fear. Our Muslim, African American, and other minority neighbors are also suffering from visibly rising hatreds. We thought we were safe here. We thought we had made it in America, and now we are faced with doubts as to our place in our own land. It is not difficult to despair over the future, turning our own anger outward, and sometimes even turning it inward against one another in our anguish over what to do. It seems as though it has ever been thus. Before we can find solutions, we complain and blame others, even our own community. Are we doing enough? Should we lie low and hope it goes away? Are we to blame for our own troubles? In this week's Torah portion, we see a similar situation. The Israelites, now freed from Egypt and languishing in the desert, had expected more from freedom, and so they bitterly complain. Yes, they have enough food, but they wanted more. They wanted meat. Yes, they left Egypt, but they thought they would get immediately to the promised land. Tired, they even looked back towards slavery as something that wasn't really so bad. Moses grows weary. He can't manage this despair alone. He wants out. But God has a solution. 70 elders are chosen from the community so that, in the words of Scripture, they shall share the burden of the people with you, and you shall not bear it alone. And so we found perhaps the first Jewish community organization in history. As we begin our JCRC annual meeting, installing new leadership and thanking retiring members, we know that our leaders, our outstanding, dedicated staff, as well as our elected leaders, cannot lead by themselves. We, the board members, and the entire Jewish community must share their burden with them so that they not bear it alone. And so we offer thanks to our outgoing leadership, and we ask God's blessing on those who are taking up the mantle as they assume leadership during these difficult times. We recall the rabbinic dictum that we are not to separate ourselves from our community, but that we should come together to support and contribute to the betterment of our Jewish community and our greater community as we navigate through the troubled waters of our times. May those who work for the betterment of our community and its relationship with our neighbors be strengthened in their work by the support the rest of us offer them. And may we look forward to the time when we all shall live under our vines and fig trees, when once again none of us shall be afraid. Baruch atah b'voecha, Baruch atah b'tzetecha. As you were blessed in your coming tonight, may all of us be blessed as we go forth to work for a better, a more sane, and more peaceful world. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Meyer, for that very meaningful invocation. As I conclude my 2-year term as president of JCRC, I would like to acknowledge and thank a number of individuals who have provided invaluable support and advice to me over the past 2 years. To my wife, Sharon, thank you for encouraging me to get involved and to pursue my passion for community relations. You have contributed so much to fostering Jewish identity here in Cincinnati through your passionate commitment to developing the relationship between our Cincinnati Jewish community and Israel. Federation will miss you. Thank you to our incredibly engaged and committed JCRC board, and especially the executive committee for serving as a sounding board and a source of support on difficult issues. And to my predecessor, Michelle Cohn, thank you for again chairing the nominating committee, and yes, I will take that on next year. Rana Schneider, Mazal Tov, on becoming our new president tonight. You bring a level of intellectual rigor to your consideration of issues that will truly benefit us. And while I have joked about blocking your number, please know that I will always be available for you. Thank you to Shep Englander for your friendship, your thoughtful advice, and your truly unflagging support for the work of JCRC. Justin Kirshner, wherever you are, I'm not sure, your growth over the past few years is truly amazing. Thank you for all of your hard work and your commitment to JCRC. And finally, to my partner these past 2 years, Jackie Congedo, your energy, your passion, your strategic thinking will never cease to amaze me. I will truly miss our Tuesday morning calls. Thank you for your friendship, your wise counsel, and your commitment to this organization, this community, and the cause of justice. Please remember to take a deep breath every so often. Community relations work. Community relations work will always be a marathon, not a sprint. 2 years ago, when I became JCRC president, I talked about my deep personal connection to the mission of this organization, a connection that was undoubtedly passed on to me by parents who personally experienced the darkest days in Jewish history as children and teenagers in Nuremberg, Germany. But yet, as a child of the 1960s and 70s who did not personally experience anti-Semitism, those stories of Kristallnacht and of my grandfather being beaten bloody by Nazi brown shirts seem like part of my family history and indeed part of our collective Jewish history. Anti-Semitism, at least in this country, seemed to be a page from the past. Sadly, we have seen over the course of my 2-year term that anti-Semitism is alive and well, not just in other parts of the world, but also here at home. When I became president, I could not have imagined that during my term we would see Nazis marching across the hallowed grounds designed by Thomas Jefferson. I certainly could not have imagined that those marching in Charlottesville would be praised as fine people by the President of the United States. And of course, I could not have imagined that during my term, we would experience something that had never occurred before in the history of this country: Jews murdered while praying in synagogue. Remarkably, we have now lived through this experience twice in the past year. But the anti-Semitism that we are experiencing today is not confined to the dark fringes of the far right. Some of the most hurtful examples of anti-Semitism come from members of the progressive community who are viewed by many in the Jewish community as natural allies in the fight against hatred and bigotry. We read tweets from members of Congress implying that Jews are not loyal citizens of this country, a slanderous charge that I could not help but think about last month as I walked through the American Cemetery at Omaha Beach and saw with pride the many Jewish stars interspersed among the crosses. We see Jews banned from walking in pride parades for daring to hold rainbow banners displaying those very same Jewish stars. And we see Jewish students on campus after campus harassed for expressing their support for a Jewish homeland in Israel. These are indeed challenging times. In these challenging times, the work of this organization becomes more important than ever. And as you will hear and see tonight, JCRC is fully committed to this fight. During the past year, we responded to dozens of local incidents of anti-Semitism, assisting students, families, and school systems dealing with an uptick in anti-Semitic bullying. We provided parents with tools to discuss difficult issues with their children through our Safe Spaces program after the shootings in Pittsburgh. We met with our state and federal representatives to advocate for increased state and federal funding for security at houses of worships and nonprofit institutions such as this. We increased our involvement with the Cincinnati Regional Coalition Against Hate, leading anti-bias training for teachers at area public schools. And most significantly, in April, JCRC convened a remarkable full-day regional summit on anti-Semitism and hate called Driving Out Darkness at Union Terminal. More than 40 organizations partnered with us to develop and host this first-of-its-kind program, and dozens of local and national experts joined us to lend their expertise as panelists and moderators. I would like to recognize those here tonight who worked with us to make this program such a success. Would all of our summit partners, panelists, and moderators please stand so we can thank you. The summit was attended by more than 300 participants, more than half of whom were not Jewish. National organizations are hoping to replicate the program, and advocates in other cities are using it as a guide to plan their own programs. Some of our participants explained what made the day so powerful.
It's always nicer to come together as communities for joyous occasions. It's very important for us to come together for these very serious matters because we can be much more effective when we do so. This is not just an issue for the Jewish community, it's an issue for all of us who want to eliminate hate from all of our community.
Anti-Semitism is rising, we know this. The Jews may be the first to be attacked, but often they're not the last. It's represented something much deeper that needs to be fought.
I am so impressed by the diversity here at the summit today. Looking across the room, you can tell it's a real cross-section of Cincinnati. Folks of every age and every gender and every hue of the rainbow, wearing yarmulkes and turbans and everything in between. And just to really see that folks of goodwill have come together in Cincinnati from across the various communities to see how we together can work to stomp on these hatreds.
I think it's always important to be there for one another because you never know if I would need somebody in a time like this. And It's very important to make friendships and allies with all different groups of people in Cincinnati.
Exploring both how we combat hate crimes and hate violence in our communities, and how we build an alternative vision to that hate by addressing some of the issues of discrimination that impact all of us, whether you're Black or Jewish or Muslim or gay or lesbian. At the end of the day, both the structural issues that divide us and this rising social movement of bigotry needs to be responded to.
Anti-Semitism, hatred, Islamophobia, anti-gay, I think it's more important than ever for an organization like the JCRC to not just reach a Jewish audience, to try to build a coalition of goodwill, of understanding.
Being the opinion editor at the Inquirer, there are a lot of opinions that I write that challenge the belief systems of some folks. But I think, in the words of Dr. King, we have to respond with love and light. You can't drive out darkness with darkness. You have to use light, and you can't beat hate with hate. And so we have to do it with love.
Of course, despite the efforts of this and other partner organizations, anti-Semitism sadly shows no signs of abating. But among the advantages that we have today that my parents' generation lacked is our ability to respond and take action through community-based organizations such as JCRC and the widespread goodwill of so many allies to speak up and not let hate against any community go unchecked. And so today, as we see stark reminders of those dangerous times, it's imperative that we as a community double down on our efforts. We need to call out anti-Semitism from whatever source, party, or organization. We need to educate our Jewish community, our partners, and the community at large of the dangers that we in the Jewish community understand all too well, that hatred and bigotry may start by targeting the Jews, but it never stops there. We need to dig deep and allocate community resources and dollars to protect the safety of our community and to fund organizations on both the local and national level that are on the front lines of this fight. And we need to reach across our differences, religious, ethnic, racial, economic, and develop those relationships that will bring together like-minded people to work with us to pursue the mission of this organization of developing a just society for all people. I'm confident that with your support, JCRC will continue to lead this critical fight. Thank you.
So you have to stay here for just a minute. Walter, thank you for your remarks. And please stay with me here on stage as we give you a few minutes of well-deserved recognition. My name is Jackie Congedo. I'm the director of the JCRC. Thank you. In my past life as a television journalist, I did speak publicly for a living, but I have to be honest that finding the right words to speak about what Walter's leadership has meant for the JCRC and to me personally really stumped me. It is really that profound. What my mind kept returning to is that different moments call for different kinds of leaders. And without a doubt, these past 2 years of unprecedented turbulence called for Walter Spiegel's steady and courageous leadership. 2 years ago, before toxic rhetoric on both sides of the political aisle became the norm, before Charlottesville and Pittsburgh and Poway, before rockets from Gaza and violent riots along Israel's southern border became the rule and not the exception, Walter Spiegel stepped up to lead this organization, and not long after, I was hired as JCRC director. When I interviewed for this position, I knew this was going to be challenging work, but I really never could have predicted just how challenging. Luckily, Walter has been with me every step of the way, and even for 3 months without me, as I took time at home to be with my newborn daughter. He was there on weekly calls, late at night after board meetings, first thing in the morning when our community awoke to crisis in Israel, on Shabbat after Charlottesville, and Shabbat after Pittsburgh, and Shabbat after Poway. From across time zones as he prioritized this work in the midst of a very busy other job as chief counsel for Standard Textile. He was there with strategy and vision to keep focus amidst crisis and with the wisdom to respond quickly in resonant, effective ways. He was there with credibility and earned respect of our Federation, our JCRC board, and our entire community to keep us moving forward together. And he was there with patience and compassion to entertain all perspectives and with the courage to make the right choice at the end of the day, even when it wasn't the most popular one. To a true mensch, a defender of justice wherever it is challenged, and an all-around wonderful human being, please accept this as a small token of our gratitude on behalf of our JCRC board for the selflessness and dedication with which you've served this organization. We wanted to leave you with something you can take with you, obviously, but also we wanted to recognize your outstanding leadership with a more symbolic gesture. So this mezuzah will be hung inside Rebecca's tent, Spiegel Women's Shelter at Shehereth Israel, Atlanta, Georgia, which was dedicated to your parents who helped start it. And under the mezuzah will hang a plaque that reads, in honor of Walter Spiegel's transformative leadership of the Cincinnati Jewish Community Relations Council, inspired by his parents' legacy of opening doors of opportunity and safety for all people. Walter, we did come into this work together, and I will be forever grateful for that. The JCRC is stronger, and our Cincinnati community certainly a more just place because of you. Thank you.